UFC 281, arguably a matchup of the two greatest strikers to ever participate in the sport of MMA. Real quick, slide in the comment section below and tell me if you agree with that sentiment or not. And if you disagree, which fighters are held in a higher regard in the art of striking that have fought in the UFC, or you could take it anywhere in regards to the entire sport of MMA. I mean, I know Alex Pereira doesn't have a world of experience fighting in MMA, but you cannot argue the skill set he has when it comes down to the striking. Israel Adesanya, I don't need to say anything about him. I mean, we know the deal with Izzy. Izzy is regarded as the best striker to ever participate in the sport of MMA. So you guys know that this fight runs deep. We know that this is a big time rematch for Israel Adesanya. We know that he's been put to sleep by this man, Alex Pereira, over in the kickboxing world. I mean, everybody's getting up for this fight. If you're not excited for this matchup, I don't know what to tell you. I absolutely love this card for a multitude of reasons. There's a lot of fights I'm looking forward to scattered all throughout the card. From a betting perspective, I think that there's some excellent lines sitting there for us. So that's always a great thing as well. UFC 281, the show begins now.
The teller.
It's another day. Left jab, right jab. This is MMA. Mixed martial arts, quick body parts, undefeated when I pick 'em. Who the champ, who the victim? Looking in my crystal ball, I predict the winner. Never stop fighting. If you lose, keep your chin up. Know how the game go. I'm a smart fella. Welcome to the show. This the MMA fortune teller.
The MMA fortune teller.
The teller.
What is up, you guys? UFC 281. I'm curious. On paper, which fight card were you looking more forward to? UFC 280 or UFC 281? Personally, I think at this point, the UFC 281 card has me a little bit more excited, and I definitely feel that this card will deliver more so. Now, of course, hindsight's 2020, and I was able to see UFC 280. There were some fights that were fun or whatnot, but you guys know I wasn't crazy about the way that card played out. Overall, I wasn't crazy about the Dillashaw-Sterling fight, of course. The way that Dillashaw got hurt, his shoulder popped out, that was a real bummer there. But I don't know. There's some fights that are on this card that really have me excited. And let's talk about some of the cards. Some of the fights on this card that get us excited. Of course, Izzy versus Pereira. I mean, you could argue that's right there with the Charles Oliveira versus Islam Makhachev fight. I mean, stylistically, just a perfect matchup. We're also intrigued to see how it's going to play out. I think the Esparza versus Seung fight is a sleeper fight for women's mixed martial arts. This is about as good as it gets. I know Zhang's coming in as a big favorite, but there's some rumors that have came out that are saying that Esparza is feeling as good as she's ever felt. She's fully healed up and rested up, and she feels that she's going to try to take out Zhang, who we know Zhang is a stylistic nightmare for Esparza, but we'll get to that fight. DP versus Chandler. I mean, give me a break there. Frankie Edgar versus Gutierrez. I'm loving this fight. I'm loving this matchup here. I understand that Edgar's at the end of his roads, but he looks to be in phenomenal shape. Chris Gutierrez is always such an exciting fighter. He's a sniper. And it could be the last time we see a legend like Frankie in there. And that's a fight that gets me excited. Hooker versus Claudio Puelles. Puelles is on the up and up. Hooker has his back up against the wall. Renato Moicano and Brad Riddell, two fighters that have their backups against the wall based on their last performances. Renato Moicano showing the heart of a lion, taking that fight on short notice against RDA. I mean, it's just, this card's stacked, man. Dominick Reyes versus Spann. I'm liking that fight. Erin Blanchfield versus Molly McCann. Talk about a sleeper fight in regards to women's mixed martial arts. This is the fight here. Molly McCann has been an absolute wrecking machine. Erin Blanchfield is the dark horse of the division. I mean, really, I can go on and on all the way literally up into the first fight. I'm excited for it. So we're going to be talking about every single one of these fights. You guys know the routine. We're going to have the timestamps here for you. Real quick before we jump into the first fight, if you guys could hit that like button, it means a lot to me. Subscribe to the channel. Catch me on all my social media, on Instagram at MMA Fortune Teller _, on Twitter at the MMA Teller. And if you guys ever want to work with me for my official plays, you guys know the routine. Reach out to me and I'll send you over my pricing. Appreciate you guys more than you'll ever know. Kicking the card off, we have Israel Adesanya's teammate Carlos Ulberg taking on Nicolae Negumereanu, who's been on an absolute tear on a 4-fight winning streak. Negumereanu is a fighter that has really been cruising under the radar. He's a fighter that not a lot of people had their eyes set on, that they really weren't giving him too much respect. And he has slowly grasp the respect of all the fight fans. I mean, if you're not respecting what he's doing, you're not really paying attention. I mean, in his last fight, went out there, absolutely starched the Ukrainian Ihor Pereira, a fighter that a lot of people had high hopes for. They kind of looked at him as a high prospect coming out of American Top Team. Obviously, he had a lot of personal issues going into that fight, but the performance that Negumereanu put on was stellar. Negumereanu is a fighter that has shown that he's willing to go to war. We've seen him battle guys like Kennedy and Chekou. The knockout over Ike Villanueva was another stellar performance. And then even in his first UFC victory, taking out Alexa Kamar, Stipe Miocic's training partner. Carlos Ulberg. Carlos Ulberg had a beautiful performance on Dana White's Contender Series, got the contract, and then had a very, very disappointing performance against Kennedy and Chekou. And that was a fight where he really kind of broke down, if you guys remember. In that fight, he landed some big shots early. We know that his striking is phenomenal. I mean, he's a very, very crisp striker, a very technically sound striker. But what looked like when push came to shove, he kind of froze up a bit. If you guys remember, he kind of froze up a bit, and then he started to eat some big shots against Kennedy. And keep in mind, Kennedy is a common opponent of both guys. The Kennedy and Chekou fight against Negumereanu, that fight played out a lot closer than some people remember. Let's be honest, it could have almost went either way. I think there might have even been a point deduction. But still, Nicolae was just an absolute lion in there. Carlos, the Black Jag, he kind of broke down. But after breaking down in that fight, he goes out there, gets 2 victories in a row. Now, the Fabio Cherant fight, if you guys remember, he was very hesitant in that fight. And it made sense, right? Coming off that knockout loss, the first time he ever tasted defeat in his pro career on the MMA side of things. He was very hesitant in that fight, and I felt that was not the most impressive performance. He should have went out there and starched a guy like Fabio. And in fact, you've seen Carlos keeping his hands low at times and almost giving Fabio a chance to be a real threat in that fight. I didn't really like the way that fight played out for Carlos, but then 3 months ago, he went out there and absolutely starched Tafan and Chukwi, which that was his biggest fight in the octagon, in my opinion. So he's going to be looking to build off that momentum. I feel that Negumereanu is going to be here to stay in this fight. I don't think he's going to be put away that easily. He's shown to have a very, very solid chin. Like I said, he's extremely tough. Now, that could be the issue for Carlos, because Carlos might have some early success. He might land those crisp shots from the outside. But if Negumereanu keeps marching forward and makes this a war, which is the way I see this fight going, I want to see how Ulberg shows up in that type of fight. He's going to have to dig deep. Now, the difference is from the first time when Ulberg broke down in that Kennedy fight, he now has more experience in the cage. I'm sure he feels way more comfortable in there. He now has 7 pro fights under his belt. Keep in mind, he has experience over in the kickboxing world as well, so he has that combat sports experience. But in the MMA world, that should help him out there. Believe it or not, the fighter that's 4 inches shorter, and Nicolae, is going to have a 1-inch reach advantage. I really like that for Nicolae. Another X factor to keep in mind is Nicolae has been training with some stellar fighters, okay, over at Extreme Couture. And even if you look in the background, I believe you see Ankalaev walking in the back. If you follow him, there you see Ankalaev. If you follow him on IG, though, you see him surrounded by some of the best talent in the sport, which that carries some serious weight. He's really training with those guys. He's getting it in, and his skill set's going to be elevating. And of course, Ulberg training with Izzy as well. But so let's go slide over to the betting line. I'm getting a little bit too excited to talk about this first fight. I'm taking too long, right? So Carlos Ulberg is a minus 125 favorite with the comeback on Nicolae at plus 105, a very slight underdog. I'm going to be taking Nicolae Negumereanu to get the job done. He's came through for me before in an official play spot. He's a dog. And as long as he doesn't get starched from the outside, if he doesn't play the fight at range and play that tricky, cute type of fight, I think if he makes this a dog fight like I see it playing out to be, I think that Negumereanu is the fighter that digs a little bit deeper. He'll land some big shots. He'll make things ugly, and I could see him edging this fight. It's a very close fight. Wouldn't be shocked if Ulberg shows up and looks better than ever and is just a little bit too much of an athlete and a polished kickboxer and takes the fight. It's a close fight, but give me the dog here in the first fight of UFC 281. Two extremely talented bantamweight fighters, Julio Arce taking on Montel Quick Jackson. It's great to see Jackson stepping back in the cage. I mean, he's just not the most active fighter. And, as far as I'm concerned, that's very disappointing because he's such a skilled fighter, and I'm always excited to see him fighting on these cards. We all know about the stories of his hands being the same size as Francis Ngannou's. That's crazy, being the fact that he fights in the bantamweight division. But he's a lot more interesting than just that. I mean, this is a fighter that just has some real natural abilities when he's in there. Does everything pretty well. I mean, this is a guy that I wouldn't say there's one thing that's necessarily his strength. He's a good grappler. We've seen him go in there and absolutely dominate fighters down on the mat. On the feet, his striking is getting better and better. He has that southpaw stance that gives a lot of guys problems. But real quick, to go back to the size of his hands, one thing I've noticed when he controls guys down on the mat, he does have excellent wrist control. When he pushes fighters up against the cage, he does have excellent wrist control, with the size of his hands. We've seen him control opponents there. I think that could play into effect in this fight. Julio Arce, more of a sharpshooter, more of a striking-based fighter. I think that Arce is a little bit more live at distance in this fight. I want to see Jackson kind of mixing things up more so. If you remember what Montel Jackson did to Andre Sukumtop back in the day, just smashing him down on the mat. We could take a look at some of the work that he's put in throughout the years. Taking out Felipe Coleres after that, finishing Jesse Strader as well, whooping up on JP Bays. Now his one loss was against Brett Johns. And I know that was in the grappling realm, but keep in mind, first and foremost, Brett Johns is an absolute leech. We've seen him go out there and do that to all types of guys. Brett Johns is just a little bit on another level when it comes to the grappling. That doesn't necessarily mean that Montel Jackson's not very equipped there as well. So I still do think that Montel Jackson needs to change levels and threaten from different types of ways in this fight. I don't want to see him just sitting in the pocket throwing down with a guy like Arce, because like I said, Arce is a sharpshooter. You think about the knockout over Julian Erosa, the knockout over Andre Ewell, and then in his last fight, he was able to take out Daniel Santos as well. Losses to Yadong Song and Hakeem Dawodu. The Dawodu fight was very close to split decision. Loss for him there. Just don't turn your back on Arce, because Arce is a fighter that is, again, he's a very sharp fighter, a southpaw as well. So southpaw versus southpaw in this fight, it's going to be an interesting one on the feet. I gotta side with my boy Montel Jackson here. Jackson has came through for me in big spots before. I am a little curious to see how he looks as far as him not being so active. I hope that he's staying in the gym and refining his craft. I really hope that that's what he's doing. I don't really have a very I'm not exactly sure what he's been up to. If you follow him on Instagram, he doesn't put a lot of posts out. He's a very under the radar type of guy. So I'm kind of curious what he's been up to, but I'm willing to bet that he's been getting it in, and we'll see the best version of him. That's what I'm assuming. He's 30 years old, and let's go take a look at the betting line here. Montel Jackson's a just slightly over a 2-1 favorite, a minus 210, and Arce is a plus 170. From a betting perspective, I think that line's pretty sharp. It's almost hard for me to say which line I respect more so, because I do respect the value in Arce, but at the same time, Montel Jackson's a fighter that you see some pretty big tags next to his names. You don't even always see a minus 210. You're used to seeing minus 400, in lines like that, some of the matchups that he's had. Now, this is a step up in competition. I do think that Jackson's going to mix things up in this fight, and I think that he's going to dig a little bit deeper and get the job done here. But I wouldn't be shocked if Arce lands some clean shots and shakes things up, okay? So this is a little bit of a tricky one from a betting perspective, but give me Montel Jackson to edge this fight and get the job done. The Lone Wolf, Mike Trizano, taking on Sting, Seung Choi. Choi coming off 2 losses in a row, but I want to talk a little bit about those losses in case you really haven't been understanding what's been going on in those fights. First and foremost, the Joshua Culibao fight, the heart that he showed in that fight, his most recent fight, it went to split decision. Now, if I remember correctly, Culibao deserved to get the nod there, but Seung Choi was hurt in that fight. He was hurt in a substantial way early in the fight. He got tagged with some big shots. The heart that he showed in that fight was second to none. That was really a top tier performance as far as a fighter getting hit with some big shots and just continuously marching forward and digging deep. So he shows that he's an absolute dog. Besides that, Seung Choi, he's a fighter that has shown that he's very skilled as well. He's a nasty striker. He's a striker that really gives a lot of his opponents problems on the feet. I mean, you take a look at his stature. He's 6 foot with that 74.5-inch reach. He's going to come into this fight with a 3.5-inch reach advantage. Comes into a lot of his fights with that length advantage. He's nasty. He throws wicked shots. Mike Trizano, a little bit more of your meat and potato type of fighter. He's a fighter that has good cardio. He'll come in with the mullet, dolled up in the back. He's looking to go to work. He has his hard hat with him. I mean, he's that type of fighter. He's not exactly the same, but Matt Frevola, I had him on the show as well. He's fighting in this fight card. They're a little bit different stylistically, but they have that same skill set in the fact that one aspect of their game is that they go to work. They have good cardio. They're dogs. They go to work, and they're always live to pull up an upset. Mike Trizano, I know he's coming into this fight extremely hungry after just tasting defeat 2 times in a row, losing 3 of his last 4 fights. If he loses this fight, I could easily see this being the last time we see Trizano in the cage. I could see him going over to Bellator or World Series of Fighting without a doubt. So this is a big fight for him. Choi, on the other hand, if he loses, that's 3 in a row, but he's been putting on performances, so I really don't see him going anywhere, to be honest with you guys. Mike Trizano, training out of Tiger Schulman's for a long time, really a staple of that gym. He has some good striking as well, but I think that Seung Choi will have the edge in the striking department. I think he's going to land some big shots. I think he's going to have learned from his last fight. Maybe he won't be over eager in this matchup, and he won't get caught with a little counter shot and it'll throw him off his rocker early in the fight. I think this time he's a little bit more patient, and then he'll pick things up, but he'll start landing some clean shots in this fight. I could see him stuffing the takedowns of Trizano, kind of keeping it on the feet for the most part, enough for him to get the job done here. And I am taking the Sting, Seung Choi, to get the job done, and this is a fighter that I'm very excited to watch. He's one of my favorite fighters in the game right now. Maybe that's a little bit of a push right now because I'm amped up for UFC 281 and the coffee's kicking. But he really is a fighter that when I see him walking out to the cage that I get up for, I'm excited for. I know it's going to be a war, and it's just a pleasant sight to watch from watching his striking and all that. So he's a minus 165 favorite going into this matchup with Trizano. Trizano, the plus 135 dog. Just keep in mind, we talked about it. Trizano is a guy that's came in, he spoiled the party before, had that big victory over Ludwig Klein as a dog. At plus 135, if you think you see some value there, maybe you want to attack that line. I think I see more value on the minus 165 line of Seung Choi. It's not extremely high. I know he's coming off 2 losses and he needs to show us something here, but I think that this is a fight that he gets up for, and I think that he takes this fight via decision. I think he lands the cleaner shots from the outside and digs deep and takes the fight. So I think I see more value on the minus 165 line. Karolina Kowalkiewicz taking on Silvana Gómez Juárez. Karolina Kowalkiewicz, all right? Remember her back in the day fighting for the belt against Joanna Jędrzejczyk. She was undefeated at the time, 2 undefeated Polish fighters. Karolina was a girl that was just so respected back in the day. She really ran into a tough road as of recently. We know about all the losses that she tasted against Michelle Waterson, Alexa Grasso, Jan, and Jessica Penne. The Penne fight being, without a doubt, the most disappointing out of those losses. It was great to see her rebound the way that she did against Felice Herrig, but let's keep things in perspective, man. Felice Herrig is a fighter that hasn't been that active. She's taking pictures of her toes outside the octagon. She's making money there. She's making millions, which is crazy, right, guys? She's making millions of dollars taking pictures and posting pictures of her toes. I mean, look at Karolina Kowalkiewicz is doing it for free right here. It's a little crazy to me, especially for the fact that Felice Herrig has ugly feet. But, you guys are dogs out there. So, I really don't hold too much stock into that victory. Now, it was a big victory for her. I know she got the submission and all that, but I'm not necessarily sold on her making this big rebound in her career. She's still 37 years old. she'll have a 1-inch reach advantage. They're both 5'3". Silvana Gómez Juárez has shown that she is a very talented fighter. She's coming off that knockout victory over Na Liang. Before that, she got submitted by Vanessa Demopoulos, but let's put things in perspective. In that fight, she dropped Vanessa with a big shot on the feet. She followed her down to the mat to finish her off, and that was a learning experience for her, right? She shouldn't have dove in on a girl like that has some serious BJJ skills. She should have slowed things down a little bit. She got caught with that sub. I think that we still haven't seen near the best of who she's going to be with her abilities. I think that she's going to really groom out to be a good fighter. She's 11-4. Now she's 37 years old too. And she actually has 15 professional fights compared to 20 fights of Karolina. So, I mean, she has some mileage on her too. But, I mean, we've only seen her in the UFC for 3 fights. The way I look at her, I think that she still has some mileage to go. I think that Karolina has more wars put in, more 5-round fights, more fights where we've seen her bloodied up and banged up. I've seen her slow down. I mean, there's really been some performances of Karolina's where you really have seen that she's slowed down, and the technique on her striking and her technical defense has really taken a step back. Where in the meantime, Silvana's going out there and she's laying a big shot. She's cracking. I got to side with Silvana Gómez Juárez here. Now, if Karolina's going to go out there and pull the upset off, I think that she's going to come in with a disciplined game plan coming out of American Top Team, where we know it's one of the best fight camps, training facilities on planet Earth. She has great coaches around her. She's going to look to get this fight down to the mat at one point in time. That's what she has to do. And again, you see her here with the girls over at American Top Team. A lot of recognizable fighters, Kayla Harrison. There's all types of stud women's mixed martial artists that she's training with. Marion Moroz. Who's this over here? I don't know. We got to take a look at that a little bit later. But, Karolina, all joking aside, she's still a very crafty veteran, and she's going to look to get this fight down to the mat and maybe try to get a submission over the Argentinian. And that is a possibility, but at the end of the day, I'm still siding with Silvana Gómez Juárez. Let's pull up the betting line on this fight. It's pretty much a pick-em here. Silvana Gómez Juárez is a slight underdog at -107 with the comeback on Karolina at -115. So people are liking the octagon experience of Karolina, and they think that she's going to pull out some tricks and get this fight down to the mat in similar fashion to what she did in her last fight. Let's see if she can do that. I'm still going to take the Argentinian. I think that she gets the job done. We got the bulldozer Ottman Azaitar taking on the steamroller Matt Frevola. First and foremost, Ottman hasn't fought in over 2 years. His last fight was that knockout victory over Kama Worthy. We've been seeing Kama Worthy get starched left and right since even the end of his UFC road, and since he departed from the UFC, he's been getting starched left and right outside the octagon. But let's take something into perspective as well. Ottman goes out there and he just has been finishing everybody that he's been in the cage with. Knocked out Timo Packalin outside of the UFC over in Brave. He's been knocking dudes out left and right. Matt Frevola coming off a big victory, but before that victory, we saw him get starched by Terrence McKinney. We've seen Matt Frevola landed on in a lot of fights, but he's extremely tough and extremely durable. I know he got knocked out by Terrence McKinney, but that's not necessarily what he's all about. A lot of times he'll take some big shots and he'll keep coming forward. We know that he has a crazy gas tank. He has some good power as well. He does get a little reckless at times. I mean, he's really looking to engage and put a war on. The loss to Arman Sarukian, you guys know I'm very high on Sarukian. So, going 15 minutes with a guy like Sarukian, I think that says something about Matt Frevola. Frevola is a very talented fighter. He's an inch taller. Both men have a 71-inch reach. I've had the pleasure to chat it up with Matt Frevola. He's an awesome dude. I'm rooting for Matt Frevola in this fight. I'm going to cut to the chase a little bit here, man. Ottman, he's a very talented striker, and he carries some serious power and some serious fight-ending abilities. I talked about the fact that Frevola is very tough, and usually the case is that he's marching forward, but I don't like the fact that he eats shots in his fight, in a lot of his fights, and something tells me, man, that Ottman's going to come out here and land some big shots and hurt Frevola. And whether or not he gets to finish or not, that's one thing, but I could see him really solidifying some rounds with some big shots. I know Frevola will try to use the wrestling and really try to close the distance. But I don't know. it's tough for me here, man. Like I said, I really wanted to pick Frevola. Frevola is just an awesome dude, man. But I got to go with my gut, and I got to keep it real with you guys. I like Ottman Azaitar to pull this fight off, and I wouldn't be shocked if he gets a knockout as well on the feet. I could see him landing a big shot, and maybe we see something similar to what we saw in the Terrence McKinney fight. Ottman has a lot of different skills in the feet with the striking. He's a diverse striker. And I see him throwing the kitchen sink at Frevola, and Frevola will really engage in that. He'll come forward and he'll be willing to take on some of those shots to work out his game plan. But I think that as Frevola looks to close the distance and do that, I think that he's going to really come into some danger. I think that Azaitar has good footwork, and I just think that Azaitar is going to end up getting the job done here. I really do. We'll take a look at the betting line. Azaitar is an underdog here. He's a plus 115 underdog. Frevola's coming in as the favorite. I think that this has a lot to do with the inactivity of Ottman Azaitar. Again, hasn't fought in over 2 years, but from what I've been seeing, looks to be in phenomenal shape, looks to be keeping a good crowd around him, some talented fighters around him, and I think that he's going to come into this fight ready to go. And I got to pick Azaitar to get the job done. He's an underdog, so obviously I feel there's more value on him. It's a little bit of a tricky fight with the aspect of him not fighting in such a long period of time. Obviously, it's not something you're crazy about when you're picking a fighter, but overall, I think maybe there's a little bit too much stock in the last victory that Frevola had as well against Gennaro Valdez, which, it's not necessarily one of the biggest names in the division. This is going to be a great fight. It's going to be a fight that you do not want to miss. It's going to be an action-packed fight. Potential fight night bonuses coming to these fighters right here. I think this is going to be a war. Shout out to both of them, but give me Ottman Azaitar. Listen, you guys, real quick. UFC 281 has some amazing spots to make money. I put in a lot of work on the tape. I really, really like my spots. I just want to give you guys a special heads up. You might want to reach out to me to work with me for my official plays, because I'm telling you guys, we're going to make some legit money. I promise you guys we will make money on this card, or else I'll make it good with you regardless, but we don't got to worry about that. This is going to be a profitable event. Reach out to me, and it's going to be worth it for you. Andre Petroski taking out Wellington Turman. He put the train back in the tracks, right? 2 fights in a row. Now, keep in mind, he did defeat Sam Alvey, who was on a 50-fight losing streak at the time. That was a little bit over a year ago. And then in his last fight, he did defeat Misha Cirkunov, who has shown to be absolute booty as well. So Cirkunov, once Cirkunov got that big contract a while back in the UFC when they extended him, he just never seemed to be the same type of fighter that he used to be back in the day. Either that or the game surpassed him. I don't know what's going on, but he needs to just leave the UFC at this point in time. So not too much stock in those 2 victories, in my opinion. Before that, he gets knocked out by Bruno Silva and Andrew Sanchez. I think that Wellington Turman is still very live to be starched in his fights. We've seen that aspect in his fight game. The striking defense does lack at times. Now, he is young, and I know he's been working on some things, and he has been surrounding himself with some of the best in the game. As you see him here with Glover Teixeira. I know that Glover has put in a lot of work with Turman as well. So yes, that is a big deal. I don't want to make light of that. I think that really is a big deal. Glover, a guy that has so much to offer, and at the age that Turman is at, obviously we should see him look better and better. But I haven't been completely sold on him. Petroski, on the other hand, this guy is an absolute pitbull. This guy is an absolute dog. He has shown different elements of his game at this point in time. We know he has the wrestling background. We know his grappling is very much up to par, but he has big power on the feet. And, I've been very high on him since the Ultimate Fighter show. And in fact, if I'm keeping it real with you guys, I'm a little disappointed in myself because, of course, I had him taking out Michael Gilmore. I had him winning the show, actually. I thought he was going to win that show. Now, he did fall short in the show. This was before the Ultimate Fighter. He had a loss to Aaron Jeffrey. We know Aaron Jeffrey's the real deal. But on the show, which real quick, we'll run it back on the show because they don't consider them pro fights, which is ridiculous. But so he went out there. He finished Aaron Phillips. Put him in that guillotine choke. Then he got caught in that choke against Brian Battle. He kind of fizzled in that fight. His cardio gave out on him a little bit. After that, went out there, destroyed Michael Gilmore, took out Yozong Hu, the Chinese fighter, a guy that we don't even really know if he's a UFC caliber fighter. And I feel personally that I still should have known that he's the real deal. And going into that Nicholas Maximov fight, I should have sided with him. I really feel like I should have sided with him, and I didn't. And, I've been very high on Renzo Philly. and all those guys have been putting in work. And I dropped the ball on that. I did say that Petroski, that the line was more favoring towards him. There was more value on him, but I ended up siding with Maximov, and that's something I should never did. Petroski's the real deal, and he showed it with the quick work that he made of Maximov. And I'm not going to be doubting him going into a fight here with Wellington Turman. I am taking Andre Petroski to win this fight. I can see Petroski landing some of the bigger, heavier shots on the feet. Now, he does need to work on his technical abilities and his fluidity with the striking, but he carries some serious power. The striking's coming around slowly, but I could see him getting a hold of Wellington, slamming him down on the mat, getting on top of him down there, maybe controlling him, working some ground and pound and whatnot, maybe pulling off a submission on Turman. Turman's 2 losses were via knockout. So, don't be shocked if Petroski lands a big shot on him there. Petroski, 31 years old, cruising into the prime of his career. He'll have a 1-inch reach advantage. Both men 6 foot. Petroski is just an absolute specimen, and I think he gets the job done here. I think that Turman's a little bit of a fraud. I shouldn't say it like that, but a little bit of a fraud. I think that his skill set will continuously grow over the next couple of years, so the book's not out on him, but based on what we've seen from him, I'm not overly impressed, and I think that Petroski will be quicker to the punch, quicker with his movement, quicker to his attacks in general, and he'll get the job done, and I could see that finish potentially coming. Petroski's a -210 with the comeback on Turman at +170. I think that line is sharp right there. It's accurate. It's good. And I would still even side more so towards Petroski at a -210 line, but I wouldn't go much more high than that. I think that you might be pushing it if you're reaching at -240, 250. It's a little bit high. Again, and with those X factors of Turman being young and still putting in work with Glover, and maybe we see his skill set take a little bit of a leap. But overall, based on the film, when we break it down, Petroski's the better fighter here. And don't be shocked if he locks up some type of wild anaconda choke or something nasty as they look to mix things up, and maybe he hurts Turman and follows him down to the mat and pulls off a sub. We got a matchup of 2 top 15 flyweight women's mixed martial artists here, Erin Blanchfield and Molly McCann. This is a big fight for the division because although both of these women are on the outskirts right now of the top 15, Molly McCann ranked 15th, Erin Blanchfield ranked 12th. I truly believe that these women can really make a run in this division and really take a lot of the fighters out, take a lot of fighters out that are ranked below them, in my opinion, especially over the next couple of years. I think that they're going to work their way towards the top here. Both of them show to have a lot of promise, and obviously more so Erin Blanchfield. What she has done since making her UFC debut, coming over from Invicta, she's 9-1 now, right? 9-1 as a pro, but going in there just putting it on these fighters. Sarah Alpar, the Miranda Maverick fight was without a doubt her biggest performance. She went out there, she was an underdog, and she went out there and just absolutely ragdolled Miranda Maverick, who we know is no pushover. JJ Aldrich. JJ Aldrich is a fighter that I have a lot of respect for. She's a sharpshooter on the feet, a tricky southpaw boxing fighter. She went out there, pulled off the standing guillotine choke on her early. Erin Blanchfield, she's cold-blooded. Molly McCann, we know that she's really had a resurrection with her career. 3 fights in a row now that she's won, and she's going out there and she's starching these girls. Not a lot of women are going out there and knocking their opponents out on the women's side of things. So, going out there and finishing Hannah Goldie, knocking out Luana Karolina, going to war with Young Kim. Molly McCann has somewhat became a little bit of a star outside of the octagon. I find it to be funny, her and Patty Pimlet. I don't fully get it, to be honest with you. I find them entertaining, but they really blew up. And I guess just because they're loud and they're kind of characters, but they don't really do it for me personally. And that's nothing to do against with them being from England, because some guys or girls from England, they really intrigue me, and I really like their character. I mean, look at Conor McGregor. He's fighting out of Ireland. Just, I don't know. They seem a little bit corny to me, a little, when you see them together, always hanging out, watching the fights, and they're so predictable, in my opinion. But, I do enjoy watching her fight and perform. And they do seem cool. I feel like I would enjoy hanging out with them, having a drink. But I think sometimes they're just a little bit too cliche and they're too predictable, and they try to have that persona, like, they're from England. They like to put a couple beers back and this and that. I know that's not the best accent there, but you guys catch my drift. I don't know. So I wouldn't mind to see Molly get cracked with a shot by Erin Blanchfield and hurt in this fight. Although that's not necessarily how I see this fight playing out. I think Blanchfield She has the avenue of using her wrestling and her grappling to go out there and stifle Molly McCann. I think that's what we're going to see in this fight. I think Erin Blanchfield is going to get this fight down to the mat, and I think she's going to dominate. I think that she's going to dominate this fight with her grappling, and that's saying a lot because Molly McCann is absolutely no pushover, and we know that Molly's been working on her takedown defense very much so, but Blanchfield has shown to me to be very polished there, and not only is she very polished there, she's still so young, and you're going to see more growth and that aspect of her game even more so throughout the next couple of years. She's 23 years old, okay? She's going to have a 6-inch reach advantage over Molly as well on the feet for when it does stay standing, but I don't expect Erin to hang out there too much. Erin's decently technically sound on the feet, but I haven't seen nothing overwhelming there. She is tough, and she could do a little something there, but I think that obviously I'm going to edge Molly McCann on the feet, and you got to be careful because Molly can land a fight-ending shot there. But Erin Blanchfield will close the distance. She'll smother Molly. She'll take her down, and it'll be a little bit reminiscent to some of the older fights that we've seen Molly participate in, where the fights like against Lara Fritzen, who's not in the UFC anymore, but believe it or not, she's a decent fighter. If you forgot about Lara, she's had some success since leaving the UFC. Taylor Santos, we know the deal with her. Some people argue she should be the champion, but the loss to Jillian Robertson, we saw her. That was her first fight in the UFC. We saw her taken down, submitted. And if you look at some of the victories throughout her career, not necessarily the biggest of names, but Blanchfield is going to be a name that's going to be very big in the years to come, and I think that Blanchfield gets the job done here. So check out the betting line on this fight here. Blanchfield is a -425 over Molly McCann. That's a big time line coming into a fight where Molly McCann is a top 15 fighter. She's going out there starching girls. People just don't believe that Molly's going to have success from the outside, or she's going to have an ample time to land that big shot and affect this fight. People see Blanchfield closing the distance and smothering her, and rightfully so, because that's what I see as well, and that's definitely the most likely outcome. Give me Blanchfield to win a unanimous decision, or maybe she even pulls off the sub in the second or third round. Erin Blanchfield is a fighter that I'm excited to see work towards the top of this division and be a real name that we're going to be talking about, working her way into a championship fight. So shout out to Erin Blanchfield. She has the look. Maybe just needs to be a little bit more vocal, and she'll explode onto the scene. We got a big time light heavyweight matchup here. This fight's going to be fun. Most likely we're going to see a finish here. Dominick, the Devastator Reyes, making his return to the octagon, taking on Ryan Superman Spann. Ryan Spann coming off a big time victory where he was able to finish Ian Cutelaba. Came into that fight as an underdog and really spoiled the party there. Ryan Spann, we know he's a powerful fighter. He's a little slow at times, but he really goes in there and he looks to crack his opponents. We've seen him show different elements of his game as well. Dominick Reyes, the former football player, we know he's a true athlete. He moves well in the cage. Now, coming off 3 losses in a row, in fact, the only losses that he's ever tasted in his pro career, he was undefeated going into that John Jones fight. A lot of people thought that he edged that fight and should have won it. He was up 2 rounds going into the 3rd round, and then John Jones kind of took over that fight. Reyes definitely should have had some more urgency in the latter 3 rounds, and he didn't, but it was a learning experience. But after that, he gets starched by Jan Blachowicz, one of the best fighters in the division, period. And then he loses to Yuri Prochazka, got caught with that nasty spinning elbow. I mean, he's the champ. We know the deal with Yuri. Yuri's just a beast. So don't put him under the magnifying glass too much. We're talking about losses to potentially 3 of the best 5 light heavyweight fighters in the world. If you want to throw Magomed Ankalaev in there, John Jones in there. We're talking about, those are the best light heavyweights. You take these 3 men, you add Glover Teixeira in the mix, and those are 3 of the best 4. And then you could throw Ankalaev in there too, top 5. We're talking about the cream of the crop in the division. Dominick Reyes, it's been about a year and a half since that knockout loss. I like that. I like the time that he's taken off. He's 32 years old. Going into this fight, it looks like he's gotten in some work with Alex Pereira. That's obviously that's a big move right there. I mean, Alex Pereira is a sharpshooter, one of the most talented strikers we've ever seen. We've already talked about that. I like the fact that Reyes was preparing with him to go to war as both men prepare for big time fights. This is really going to be a fun fight. You see Turman in the back too. So you guys know I always favor fighters that are fighting on a fight card that are preparing with other men that are on the same fight card, or preparing for huge fights themselves, whether it's in Bellator or whatnot. I really feel that if you look at the track record of fighters that have been in those situations, it does carry some weight. When these guys are all coming in, there's no distractions, they're all on the same page, and they're all looking to make a splash in the fight world. I think that it makes a big deal. So I think that Reyes has probably been getting in some of the best training that he's been getting in a long time. I know he's as motivated as ever. But from a stylistic matchup, I think that Spann has a realistic chance to land a big shot in this fight and get the finish over Reyes, keeping that streak of Reyes getting finished. I think there's a realistic possibility of that. Spann is a well-rounded fighter. We've seen him pull off subs in the past as well. He could hurt you, bring you down to the mat, and pull off some type of darsh or something like that off you. But overall, Reyes moves a lot better. He's a lot quicker. If he comes into this fight and he's playing it very cautious, I could easily see Reyes kind of, I don't want to say running circles, but just using his movement much more fluidly. And I could see him landing his shots on Spann. And Spann is a guy that kind of puts a little bit too much into some of his shots, and he leaves himself exposed at times. I could see Reyes hitting him with a counter or just starting to take the fight over, and maybe we see Spann slow down and Reyes just really look to take over this fight with his speed and some of his technical abilities too. He's a good fighter, and I think that he's due to get another victory in the octagon. Spann will have a 4.5-inch reach advantage. He's an inch taller. We know that Spann is a big dude, but at the end of the day, I'm going to say that Reyes gets that victory again in the octagon. He's a -235 favorite with Spann at a +183 mark on Bovada.lv right now. I'm leaning that there's more value on the +183 mark of Spann. I just don't know if I could necessarily trust Reyes coming in here as a -235 favorite, coming off all these losses, getting finished, and then you see Spann coming in with the momentum. He's going out there, he's starching guys. I mean, how can you say that you feel that there's some value in that -235 line? I don't necessarily see it. I edge him to take this fight. I think that line should be more like a -200, -190 maybe. So we'll keep an eye on that line, see how it moves. And we'll be on Instagram. We'll be talking about these betting lines all leading up to this fight card throughout the week. So keep up with me over there. We'll talk about that line, see how it moves throughout the week. Renato Moicano taking on Brad Riddell. Both of these fighters coming off some losses. Riddell coming off 2 losses. Moicano coming off that last-minute replacement loss where he stepped in like a dog and took on RDA. But he really got beat down like a dog as well. So credit for stepping in, but it wasn't necessarily the best look for him. I mean, I really thought that he should have performed much better in that fight. I'm very high on RDA. I know he was coming in with the full camp, but Moicano looked a little bit offbeat in that fight. And again, maybe he just wasn't preparing for a fight and it just really threw him off. I don't know. But I would have liked to seen a little bit more from him in that matchup. But again, shout out to him for stepping in and showing that what he's about. Let's also take into consideration that he took some serious damage in that fight. He took some serious damage against RDA. So that fight was 6 months ago. Not a crazy amount of time to rest up and heal up, but he feels the time is now. He's 33 and a half years old. I agree. He probably needs to step back in there now. Well, he better be careful because Brad Riddell is a fighter that really put some heat on his shots on the feet. We know that he was, at one point in time, I forget if he is currently or he was the Tiger Muay Thai striking coach over there. I know that Rafael Fiziev was also one of the coaches. I forget which one was currently or which one was beforehand, but we know that they battled and they had a great fight against each other. And Brad Riddell is just so technically sound, carries some serious power. I'm a big fan of his game. And although he's coming off the 2 losses where he got knocked out against Fiziev in that war, and then he got finished by Jalen Turner, I think Jalen Turner is an extremely talented fighter. Talk about a dark horse in the division. So, I mean, I'm not putting him under the magnifying glass too much for those 2 losses. He's still only 31 years old. That last loss was 3 months ago. I don't know. I mean, how much time has he had to rest up from the 2 beatings he's taken? I think he'll be okay. I think he'll be okay there. It ain't worse than Moicano's situation. So, you see Moicano over at American Top Team with Thiago Alves over here. So, always getting in solid training. Moicano is a very well-rounded fighter. He's a decent striker. He does have a lot of tricks down on the mat. We've seen him go in there and really exploit fighters that are not up to par with their grappling. We've seen him go in there and pull off nasty submissions. I think that he may have a little bit of an avenue if he can get this fight down to the mat to have some success down there. But Brad Riddell has shown to be a tough fighter to get down on that mat. He has good takedown defense, great footwork, and really he uses his striking to avoid fighters trying to get takedowns on him because he's an absolute buzzsaw. And a lot of fighters they almost worry about closing the distance on him because he's just chopping you down and just butchering you up. And I can see that being the case here. I like Brad Riddell in this spot. Based on the performance that I just saw from Moicano, where RDA had a lot of success in the feet. I know he's a southpaw. I know he had a lot of success in that fight, and I could easily see Brad Riddell landing some big shots here. A 0.7-inch reach advantage for Moicano, even though he's 4 inches taller, virtually identical on the length or the reach advantage there. The reach, Moicano. Rear naked choke, a submission over Alexander Hernandez, and a rear naked choke over Jai Herbert, a rear naked choke over Damir Hasnovic. Talking about those submission skills, we've talked about that earlier. I think Brad Riddell can avoid that situation, and we're going to see a little bit more of the Brad Riddell that we see in the Drew Dober fight, which was probably his best performance, going out there and outstriking a guy like Dober. The Alex De Silva fight was a good one for him. The Magomed Mustafayev fight, Mustafayev is a beast. I like Brad Riddell here. I like Brad Riddell to get the job done. Let's go take a look at the betting line here. I think that Brad Riddell will keep this fight standing, will get the better of the striking, and I wouldn't be shocked if he lands some big-time shots on Moicano and hurts him bad. So Riddell is at even odds right now with the comeback on Renato Moicano at -128. So Moicano obviously being the slight favorite there. I see more value on the Riddell line at even odds, in my opinion. We just don't know how Moicano is going to look coming off that brutal loss that he took to RDA. And I know Riddell has tasted defeat twice as of recently too, but I think that he rights the ship here, and I will pick Brad Riddell to get the job done. And it'd be tough to pick him via finish, just seeing how tough Renato Moicano is. But at the same time, expect Riddell to land some big shots. Keep an eye on that potential finish or inside the distance. Dan the Hangman Hooker making his return back to the lightweight division to take on the surging Claudio Puelles. The 26-year-old Peruvian fighter is definitely on the up and up. Dan Hooker has lost 4 of his last 5 fights. He's coming off a very, very tough loss against Arnold Allen, where he was beaten down on the feet. And you guys know I'm very high on Arnold Allen. You guys know I was on him to win his last fight that he just had against the very tough Calvin Kattar. I don't necessarily feel that loss was as bad of a loss as some people believe. I mean, yes, the beating was bad that he took, but he was dropping down to the featherweight division. I think that was a bad move from the get-go. Arnold Allen, in my opinion, is one of the most underrated fighters in the game right now. He's really showcasing that. Dan Hooker needed to bump back up to the lightweight division and do what he's been doing for years. He needs to do what he does best. And he needs to play his game. He's a solid striker, those beautiful calf kicks. He's an absolute dog. Usually he's able to withstand a lot of damage. And even in that Allen fight, he took a lot of damage. It took a lot to finally get him out of there. He's extremely tough. He's 32 years old. Now, he does have a lot of mileage on him, in my opinion. I mean, he has 33 pro fights. He's been in some wars. The Dustin Poirier fight, what an absolute war that was. Getting knocked out by Chandler early in that fight. The Makhachev fight, that was whatever. I mean, he got subbed, so not a big deal. The Allen fight was bad. So, yes, he has taken a lot of damage as of recently, where Puelles, on the other hand, is a lot more fresh. I mean, he's younger. I think that Puelles is going to be able to withstand a little bit more damage. But I actually feel that Hooker is going to be able to inflict more damage in this fight. And I know Puelles has been having some success as of recently, and there's a lot of things I like that he's doing as of recently, surrounding himself with guys like Eddie Alvarez and a lot of the legends of the game, training over at Sanford MMA. I mean, these are all things that he definitely has going for himself. But he's kind of been, having a lot of success, not solely, but he's been having a lot of success off this knee bar, right? He submitted Clay Guida with the knee bar, submitted Chris Gutzmacher with the knee bar. Now, I do think that he also submitted Felipe Silva with the knee bar. I mean, 3 of his last 5 victories have came by way of the knee bar. I mean, if Dan Hooker is on point with his defense for that submission, I mean, he could actually end up making Claudio pay for that. And I don't want to make it seem like Claudio is just going in there throwing blind knee bars. I mean, obviously he's doing a lot of things right in the cage. We saw that in his last fight against Guida. I mean, he's looking good out there. Striking's coming around as well. But I feel that Dan Hooker will have the edge in the striking department. I think that the motivation has to be there for Dan Hooker. He knows he needs this victory. He comes in this fight with a 3.5 reach advantage. He's 2 inches taller. He'll have that length to use his kicks from the outside and whatnot as well. But Dan Hooker is going to need to work from the outside. I don't want him engaging in any type of war. I want him playing this fight very cerebrally. If that's even a word. I mean, I hope it is, because that'd be ironic, right? Cerebrally. I hope he's very cerebral in this fight and has a solid game plan, because if he just goes out there and looks to make it a war, I mean, I could see him getting caught with the big shot again, and even by a guy like Puelles and being rocked and hurt. I mean, there's no telling where his brain is at this point in time. He does need some more time to heal up, in my opinion. Puelles hasn't shown to be a major threat there, so I'm not overly concerned about that. But again, I want to see Dan Hooker come into this fight, slow the pace down, work the calf kicks and the leg kicks from the outside, use his striking from the outside, and be ready to defend any type of attempts from Puelles to get this fight down to the mat, where he could try to pull some tricky types of subs off. And in general, I think that understand that as well. I am going to be picking Dan Hooker to win this fight. And I actually had an official play on Puelles against Guida. He's came through for me. He's a solid dude. I think that there's a lot of potential for him at being only 26 years old. But I have a feeling that Hooker is going to bounce back here with the big victory. Let's take a look at the betting line here. Dan Hooker is going to be a -170 favorite over Puelles, who's a +140. This is a step up in competition too. Let's understand that Puelles has been going out there and getting some victories, but I mean, guys like Clay Guida, Chris Grutzmacher, Jordan Levet, Marcos Mariano, not even a UFC caliber fighter, Felipe Silva, tough dude, but definitely makes mistakes time and time again. If Hooker slows things down here and is sharp with what he's doing, I think that this is his fight to win, in my opinion. So give me Hooker to win the fight. I mean, am I willing to take a -170 line on Hooker based on the performances that he's been putting out there and some of the question marks or the damage that he's taken? Puelles being the surging fighter that we really haven't even seen everything unravel of what he's able to do. I don't know about that. But I don't think the line's necessarily horrible. -170. It's not an extremely steep line. Hooker's battle tested. He's a very talented striker. He is proven to be a fighter that is, up until this point, is on another level than Puelles. Puelles hasn't proven that he can be on the level of a guy like Hooker and battle with the guys like Hooker has battled with and do what he's done. But Puelles has been looking good. He's going out there and he's doing what he should do against the fighters that he's been facing. But I still got to take Hooker to win this fight. And I think that line's pretty sharp. Even with everything going on with Hooker's career, I think that 170 line is reasonable. I think that's a sharp line there. It's very much on point. Now I'm very excited to talk about the rest of the fights that are on the top of this card. I mean, I really am. Not that I wasn't excited to talk about some of the other fights we just spoke of, but Frankie Edgar, a legend of the game, one of the greatest lightweights that we've ever seen in the game, which is crazy, right? He fights in the bantamweight division. Remember when he wasn't cutting any weight, and he was essentially the kingpin of the lightweight division back in the day. A lot of close fights, even the fights that he lost. A lot of people thought he may have won. The fights with Ben Henderson and all that. Frankie is such a dog. I know I've been throwing that word around a lot, but that's because this card is filled with dogs. And I don't mean that obviously from a betting standpoint. I'm not talking about an underdog. I'm talking about dog as far as the heart and the will goes of these fighters. Frankie is probably in the Mount Rushmore fighters that have that dog in them. Now he's been having a very tough time. As of recently, he's 41 years old, and he's been getting starched, right? Got knocked out by Marlon Vera, knocked out by Corey Sandhagen, knocked out by the Korean Zombie. Actually went to the distance with Max Holloway 3 years ago. He had that one lone victory in his last 5 fights where he defeated Pedro Munoz, took a lot of damage in that fight. A lot of people thought that he may have lost that fight. we talked about the dog in Frankie Edgar, which is why it's no surprise that he's 41 years old and he's still hanging on to the UFC. This guy just doesn't know anything else besides fighting. I take a look at him here. A couple weeks to go, he says him and his training partner, his training partner here, Mark Reyes, fighting on CFFC, the regional promotion up there in the Northeast on November 10th, and then Frankie's fighting on November 12th. I mean, he's still training with the young guns, preparing to go to war. I mean, you have to admire him like no other, man. Frankie is just cut from a different cloth, man. I mean, there's some guys that are cut from that cloth, but you guys know what I'm saying. There's very few of them, and Frankie Edgar looks to be in phenomenal shape. You know that he's coming into this fight as motivated as ever. He's probably putting in more work for this fight than he has ever put in his entire career. The only thing that's going to be hindering him is just his age. I mean, he probably has gotten up in the middle of the night or early in the morning and just ran more miles for this fight than any other fight. But it's the age, and it's just sometimes he's slowing down in there as recently with his defense. He's getting caught. He's getting put out. The chin is just not holding up, and that could definitely be a problem in this matchup with a guy like Chris Gutierrez, who's an absolute sharpshooter. He's a sniper of a fighter. He's patient. He'll fight from the outside. He'll hit you with the calf kicks, and he'll look to land that big shot. And we've seen him do it. I just had an official play on Chris Gutierrez against Dana Baccarel. He was an underdog in that fight, came through in a major way, hit him with the spinning back fist, followed it up with the elbows and all that. But that was 6 months ago. That was a dog play there. I've just always been very high on Chris Gutierrez. When I saw him as a dog in that fight, I had to jump all over him. Again, I love the technical abilities of Chris Gutierrez. He's so technically sound with his footwork and all of his technique from the striking standpoint. I'm high on him. He's only 31 years old. He's cruising into the prime of his career, where Frankie, on the other hand, is without a doubt on the decline. And I got to go with Chris Gutierrez to win this fight. I mean, it is what it is. I'm going to be rooting hard for Frankie Edgar to win this fight unless I got some type of official action mixed in on this play. Frankie Edgar will have a 1-inch reach advantage, even though he's 3 inches shorter. If Frankie avoids getting knocked out, if he avoids taking any big shots, yes, Frankie can win the fight. I mean, there's no question about that. Frankie is super active. He'll mix in the wrestling and all that. We've seen Chris Gutierrez at times look to counter a little bit too much and kind of he's on the back foot. If Frankie can kind of out-volume him there, wouldn't be shocked if the judges side with Frankie in a close fight. I mean, the crowd will be rooting for him. It's in New York and all that. I mean, that's definitely an X factor as well. But I see Frankie most likely getting hit with the shot. But just admire the shape that this guy's in, up in his 40s, and he's just a beast. And I'm really, really hoping that he wins. And I really like the fact that he's hanging out with all these young guns and keeping that energy, keeping up with the energy of these young guys. And but that all being said, I'm gonna favor that Chris Gutierrez gets a knockout in the second round of this fight, first or second round, kind of an earlier knockout. Let's take a look at the betting line here. Frankie Edgar's a plus 174, Chris Gutierrez a minus 225. A prime Frankie Edgar is going to be a major favorite against a guy like Chris Gutierrez, but that's just not the case. There's a decade of a difference in age, and I got Chris Gutierrez to finish this fight. And from a straight up money line standpoint, minus 225, Chris Gutierrez. Which way am I going to favor more so? I'd probably favor the minus 225 line even more than that plus 174 on Frankie, just because I just can't trust Frankie facing a guy like Chris, who's going to have moments where he's going to land some shots. Here we go. I mean, is this the fight that we're all waiting for or what? I mean, yeah, the main event is awesome, but this is a fight that I'm probably just as excited for. Dustin Poirier versus Michael Chandler. I love the beef aspect of this fight, the aspect of the kind of drama that these guys have been having as of recently. Remember, outside of the octagon cage side, they had that little drama, that little showcase of drama, a little run-in where Chandler was calling DP out. DP kind of overlooking Chandler as a fighter as he made his way into the UFC. Wanted to see Chandler pave his way in the UFC before he was barking for these big time fights. And Chandler, of course, has been putting in work for years over in Bellator. He's a fighter that should be respected. And I understand where DP's coming from, but at the same time, Chandler needs to be respected. And Chandler took his own respect since he's joined the UFC, right? Since he's joined the UFC, knocks out Dan Hooker in the first round in his debut, goes to a war with Charles Oliveira, almost prevails in that fight, but fell short in the second round, goes to war with Justin Gaethje, and then the knockout over Tony Ferguson, one of the most devastating knockouts that we've ever seen. So he's 2-2 already in the UFC, fighting some of the best fighters in the game. DP, I don't need to go on about his resume. We know what DP's all about. As of recently, finishing up the trilogy with Conor McGregor, looking sharp in those fights. But then against Charles Oliveira, didn't look that good, right? It didn't look too good in that fight, right? How'd that fight play out for him? Got submitted by rear naked choke, and I believe that was very early in the fight. Real quick, let's pull that up. That submission happened, in the third round, in the beginning of the third round, that's right. But Charles Oliveira having a lot of success in that fight. DP is 20-6 in the UFC with 1 no contest. Like I said, 27 pro fights. I mean, this guy has been a longtime staple of the UFC now. Stylistically, I think this is a tough matchup for Michael Chandler, and I'm going to explain to you why. If you run the tape back on the Justin Gaethje fight versus Michael Chandler, we know that Michael Chandler is such an explosive athlete, and he has that knockout power. But if he doesn't get that knockout and he's participating in a stand-up war, he'll land his big shots and whatnot, but he kind of gets out-volumed a little bit, and he kind of gets tagged up with the sharp shots. He gets bloodied up. We saw Gaethje do that to him, although that was a great fight. In my opinion, Gaethje was very much in control of that fight from start to finish, and really only let it play out a little bit closer just based on the fact that he's just such a dog himself. Throwing that dog out there again, but DP is a dog, and he'll give him some opportunities as well. But when DP really wants to, I think he could slow this fight down and really out jab Chandler. He can hit him with some straight shots and really bloody him up, and wouldn't be surprised if we even see a knockout in this fight. And Chandler's taking a lot of damage, and he might get rocked, might get wobbled, put down in the mat, and get submitted. Chandler's had some huge victories, but real quick, I just want to run by you some fights where Chandler's kind of fell a little short in some of these types of fights. Back in the day, first and foremost, he did defeat Eddie Alvarez in the first fight, one of the greatest fights I've ever seen. He was only 8-0 at the time. He was so green. He was the reigning champ. He lost to Eddie Alvarez in that rematch. It was another fight that was a war. Kind of fell short in the later rounds. Then the loss to Will Brooks was an extremely disappointing loss, especially with the way Will Brooks' career went. The way he got finished in the fourth round in the rematch against Brooks. Yes, went out there, handled business, had some big victories. The Brent Primus fight, he got hurt, whatever. But the way that he fought Patricio Pitbull, the way he made some defensive flaws, again, being too reckless, got caught with the big shot, got knocked out there. The Charles Oliveira fight was slipping at one point in time, got finished there. The Gaethje fight, he did hold up, but he ate some big shots in that fight. I see a recipe for this fight. I see a recipe on Chandler's side of things where he's going to be a little bit too reckless, and I think that DP is going to tag him up a little bit and hurt him in this fight. DP is just a very technically sound fighter, and I'm siding with DP to get the job done here. I think this is going to be a stand-up war. That's how I see this fight taking place. I think they really go tit for tat on the feet. Chandler will have those opportunities to land a big shot, and I think that's what he is going to have to do if he's going to get the job done. I think he needs to knock out Poirier. He needs to hurt him bad and shake things up. Otherwise, I see DP kind of just getting the better of each round and potentially getting that finish as well. DP, 33 years old. He's hungry. He's coming off that loss that was 10 months ago. Chandler, on the other hand, 5 months ago, he was in there with Ferguson. Potentially the biggest fight of his career. Maybe not. Maybe the Dan Hooker fight, the first fight in the octagon, was bigger. DP will have a 2.5-inch reach advantage. He's an inch taller. Maybe not as much as some of you guys think. I'm on DP. Let me not go on too much about it. DP's a -175. And I think this is another accurate line. -175 is kind of where I would cap this fight. Chandler, +145. You got to give him a little bit of respect there. The line can't be ridiculous. I mean, he can't be +200, +220. Maybe that's a little bit too much value there. I wouldn't be shocked, though, if we see more action come in on Dustin Poirier. So you keep an eye on that as well. Again, we'll be talking about these lines all throughout the week on my IG. So follow me on MMA Fortune Teller _. We'll keep an eye on how these lines are trending over the week leading up to the fight. And I think that we could see some action coming in on DP. Maybe he settles in around a -195 or so. Wouldn't be shocked there. DP is a household name, has a lot of following. He's in the millions over on Instagram. I know Chandler has that following too, but the fights with McGregor have really brought in Poirier to that stardom, and we've seen those types of fighters get a lot of action thrown in on them. So keep an eye on that as well. But give me DP to get a late finish in this fight, maybe a third round finish. We'll see how that goes. Carla Esparza, the champion, the two-time UFC champion, the former Invicta champion as well, right? I mean, she is, look at her with all her gold belts here, taking on the former UFC champion herself, Weili Zhang. A lot of people believe Weili Zhang is the most talented fighter in the UFC strawweight division. Coming off that humongous victory over Joanna Jędrzejczyk, just what a masterclass, the spinning back fist she landed. Before that, she had the split decision, lost to Rose Namajunas, was a very close one. Some people thought she could have took that. And then, of course, she got caught the first time around by Rose early in that fight. Weili Zhang is just a beast. She's just so physically imposing. She's so technically sound. She does so many things well. I'm going to cut to the chase here, guys. I don't want to, play with you guys here, right? Carla Esparza, a tough boxer. Without a doubt, the bread and butter of Carla Esparza is her wrestling. But she's in a little bit over her head, in my opinion. I think this is a very tough matchup for her because I don't really see Carla having a super amount of success with her wrestling in this matchup. And I think that when Zhang keeps this fight on the feet, she's going to really spark off on Carla. I don't expect Zhang to be as hesitant as Rose Namajunas was in the most recent fight where Carla snuck off the belt this time around. I mean, I don't know what was going through Rose Namajunas' head in that fight there. Now I want to give all respect that's due to Carla. I mean, she is a stud in a lot of ways. We know the work that she's put in throughout the years. We know how disciplined of a fighter she is. I mean, she's as professional as it gets. But again, stylistically, I think that this is a tough matchup for her here. Zhang is going to be 3 inches taller. Both women have a 63-inch reach, identical there. I just think that Zhang is gonna land some big shots. I think that she's just gonna just put on a show. I think she's gonna put on a show against Carla. I think she's gonna be ripping the body kicks like you see here. I think that her boxing is gonna really outclass Esparza's feisty boxing. We know Esparza's worked on her boxing a lot throughout the years, and she's tough there. She'll kind of bombard you with her 4 or 5 punch combinations as she steps in, throwing those straight shots and tries to kind of feint with the wrestling and sets up her boxing strikes. But that ain't going to work on Zhang. I just feel like Zhang's going to see that coming. She'll circle with her footwork. She'll land some big shots, and she'll just be a whole different type of animal on the feet, in my opinion. So Zhang, it's about time that Zhang reclaims her championship that she kind of let out of the grasp of her hands. I mean, she should be the champion right now, and I think she gets the job done. So, yes, her striking will be just too much for Carla, and I don't see Carla imposing her wrestling enough to get the job done here. Carla's not a girl that you necessarily want to just completely overlook. Like I said, she's just such a gamer. A lot of people counted her out against Rose Namajunas, and she still somehow intimidated Rose enough to squeak that fight off, even though there was no strikes thrown. Carla Esparza is a plus 285. The comeback on Zhang is a minus 375. It's a pretty high line, and I think it's an accurate line. All right. That's just pretty crazy to say. I think that's an accurate line. I mean, the line needs to be up that way because there's just a recipe for Zhang to get the job done here. And the chef's going to be in the kitchen whipping up stuff, whipping the recipe up, and that's what's most likely going to happen. You're going to have a beautiful 4-course meal in front of you. What are you going to do with that line, though? I mean, you got to mix it in a parlay, or maybe you're eyeing Zhang to get a finish here. I mean, you got to do something with that line. I don't know, minus 375. It's pretty steep if you're just going to throw some action at that and hope to really gain anything back. Maybe you mix it in a parlay, but I see Zhang putting on a masterclass here and potentially getting even a finish, which is a bold statement, right? In the strawweight division of the women's mixed martial arts side of things, Zhang is something else. You guys, you know what time it is. This is a major event. You guys know what I'm doing. I'm giving you guys 2 free events for my official plays. If you reach out to me, get my referral link for bovada.lv, sign up and make a deposit. You're going to get an added bonus in your account. It's the best sportsbook, in my opinion. If you have any questions about it, when you reach out to me, ask me. I'll help enlighten you about what this sportsbook is about. But it's, in my opinion, the best sportsbook out there. I don't work with them. I could give referrals for any sports book that I want. I choose bovada.lv because, in my opinion, it's truly the best. All right. So reach out to me if you have any questions. I'd love to answer them for you. And again, you're going to get 2 official cards, two cards for my official plays that you can use for any fight card you want. And you're going to want to use it for UFC 281. I promise you that. It's going to be a big time profitable event. Woo! Here we go. Israel Adesanya taking on Alex Pereira in the main event. We talked about it earlier. This is probably the greatest striking matchup that we've ever seen in the sport of MMA. I love the fact that it has bad blood mixed in it, with Alex Pereira already having a knockout over Israel Adesanya over in the kickboxing world. In fact, I believe he has 2 victories over him, right? I believe he went to decision against him once and also had the knockout over him. We could take a look at those real quick. Let's see here. So, yep, he had a unanimous decision over Israel Adesanya back in 2016. And then it was in the rematch in 2017 where he knocked him out as well. Alex Pereira, if you weren't keeping up with him before he got into the UFC, I mean, he's a world-class kickboxer. He's always been a very well-respected kickboxer. He's so technically sound. When you talk about a fighter being technically sound, I know I throw that around here time and time again when I'm talking about specific fighters. No, it's different when we're talking about Alex. He's extremely technically sound. He's so patient in there. He trusts his technique. He sits down on his shots. He lets fighters walk into shots. The knees come up, the elbows come up, and everything is so beautiful. I just saw a video of his sister fighting recently, and it was ridiculous. His sister fights just like him. Just absolutely beautiful to watch the technical abilities of the Pereira siblings. Israel Adesanya, listen. Israel Adesanya is a fighter that is a treat to watch as well. He's extremely technically sound. The feints that he throws, you see him setting some stuff up with the feints right now. The confidence that he brings into the cage. He has so many X factors that he brings into the cage when he fights. He has worked on his takedown defense very much throughout the years, and stylistically, he just gives so many guys problems in the division. Now, you guys know how I feel about the middleweight division. Let's be honest here. I felt that the middleweight division, I felt for a while, it's one of the more weak divisions. And I mean, it's not a coincidence that you see a fighter like Alex Pereira come into the UFC and work his way into a title shot as quickly as he did. Now, of course, yeah, okay, there is the bad blood that helped the case to be made for him to get that quick shot. But no, you don't see a fighter come into the UFC. And if you don't realize how fast he's done it, Alex Pereira made his UFC debut. Okay, made his UFC debut in 2021, the end of 2021, almost the beginning of 2022. We're talking about within 1 year, a fighter who has barely had any MMA fights has came in, had 3 victories in a row, 2 knockouts, 1 decision over Bruno Silva. It was a fun fight to watch as well, and has put himself in a position to fight for the belt. I mean, if you want to talk about a weight class that's shallow and weak, I mean, I'm telling you guys, it is. So I know a lot of you guys get defensive when I say that. It is what it is. And that's why I say Bo Nickal's going to wreak havoc and work his way up to the top of the division within the next year as well. But I mean, you have these meat and potato guys like Jared Cannonier or Marvin Vettori all the way at 2 and 3. I mean, Robert Whittaker's a fighter I respect a lot. He's there. But Derek Brunson at the age that he's at, Paulo Costa, I mean, he's really shown not to be the fighter that everyone thought he was at one point in time. He's a fun guy, but he's not there, in my opinion. To be 6th in the rankings, I'm not on this weight class. Let me not. Andre Muniz is a sleeper. He's a fighter that's going to work his way towards the top. He's a stud. Gastelum past his prime. Darren Till, completely overrated. Jack Hermanson, he's a good fighter, but he's come on, give me a break with Hermanson. Whatever. I mean, he's had his time. I just wanted to go on about that real quick. Alex Pereira has worked his way to the shot extremely fast, but stylistically, it makes a lot of sense because both these guys, the striking is the bread and butter. They know each other. They fought in before. They have the background and all that. I get why this fight's happening, and I'm super excited for it. How do I see this fight taking place? I think this is going to be a striking matchup, right? I really do. Israel Adesanya has had more time to work on his mixed martial arts craft. Obviously, he has way more MMA fights, and he's devoured himself in the sport of MMA much earlier than Pereira and much more so than Pereira. But in my opinion, Israel Adesanya has went the route of working on his takedown defense throughout the years. He never had to really work on his takedown offense, and why would he? We're talking about quite possibly the greatest striker in the sport of mixed martial arts. Why would he have to work on his offense of grappling? And of course, you want to refine all your skills, but if we're being honest, there was really no need for that to happen. I don't think that he was really foreseeing this fight happening, a while back. This is something that's kind of brewed up recently with Pereira getting back into the sport. That being the case, like I was saying, I just think that his offensive wrestling is not going to be as impressive as maybe some of you guys think. His wrestling defense is good, but that doesn't matter here because Pereira is looking to make this a striking match, and if Israel Adesanya is not able to exploit him from his takedown defense, as far as his takedown defense goes, this fight has all the makings to be a stand-up war. And I think that Israel Adesanya is okay with that. I think that he wants to go out there and make a point. He wants to get that knockout back. He was embarrassed by Alex Pereira. Alex Pereira has been on Instagram making a complete mockery of Israel Adesanya leading up to this fight. I love it. I love it. I love the energy he's bringing. We're talking about grapefruits here, right? We're talking about a guy that walks around with a wheelbarrow in front of him. That's Alex Pereira. Look at him over here messing with the revolver, out there chatting it up with Glover Teixeira, the legend. Alex Pereira is a stud athlete. If you follow him on IG, he's doing all types of wild stuff, kicking the ball up, doing all types of weird stuff. This guy has a real sense of balance. This guy sees the shot. He's in the Matrix. He sees the shots coming. All right. So, listen, I've been very back and forth with who I was going to pick on this fight, and I want to be very clear because people have given me a hard time before for fading Israel Adesanya because I felt that there was some holes in his game. The Gastelum fight, I thought I saw some holes, but he's cleaned those things up. I like Israel Adesanya. I love watching the guy fight. He's just a phenomenal fighter. He's so technically sound too. We talk about fighters being technically sound. Israel Adesanya is a fighter that you put at the top of the list when you talk about technically sound. The feints, the distance management. Pereira does all that just as good. Pereira already has a knockout victory over him. I think Pereira has the mental advantage going into this fight. I think that Pereira, he has the striking advantage. He's shown to be a better striker already at this point in time. It's very close, but Pereira shows to have an edge there. He showed it when they had their matches in the kickboxing world. How am I going to pick Israel Adesanya here? I was going to pick him because he has more MMA fights. He's a little bit more proven on the MMA side of things, but the more I looked at him from his offensive wrestling and his clinch work and all that, I haven't really seen anything there. He uses his footwork to attack from the outside, to pick fighters apart, stuff the takedowns. That doesn't necessarily match up great with a guy like Pereira. Pereira is going to be there in his face, making this a striking war. That's how it's going to play out. I could see Pereira clipping Izzy with the big shot and putting him out again. We're talking about smaller gloves this time around. We're talking about a guy, a lot of you forget, Izzy took some big shots in that Kelvin Gastelum fight. If we see the fight play out a little bit more like that, Pereira will put you out like he has already. I'm taking Alex Pereira to win the fight, and I'm telling you guys, I was literally on Izzy as I was setting up this whole video and leading up to the point I'm recording this Friday, November 4th, about 8 days ahead of the fight. I was going to be siding with Izzy. He's so proven. His only loss in the octagon, his only loss in his pro career was against Jan Blachowicz, up a weight class. Alex Pereira has just impressed me, and I'm taking him. Both guys 6'4", both guys 80-inch reach, both guys two of the best strikers that have ever done it. Both guys have the bad blood brewing. This is the fight right here, man. And again, you see, this is what it's all about right there. Alex Pereira screaming in his face. Alex Pereira acts like he's a very chill guy and a very respectful guy, but he's actually a lot more feisty than a lot of you guys think. Like I said, he's been on IG mocking Izzy leading up to this fight. I like that. I want to see him bring that energy into the weigh-ins. I want to see him bring that energy into the cage. I think he'll go a long way. I think he'll mess with Izzy. Izzy's usually in all of his opponents' heads. It's not going to be the case here. Pereira is already a step up. He already has a leg up in that field. He's already knocked him out. Izzy knows this is a completely different type of matchup compared to all the other matchups that Izzy's had in his MMA career. This is different. All right. He's matched up now with the guy that could hang with him toe to toe in the striking realm, and if anything, has proven to be better in that field. Give me Alex Pereira. Let's go take a look at the betting line. Alex Pereira is a plus 145 underdog with the comeback on Izzy at minus 175. I think there's some slight value on the plus 145 line of Pereira. I would say I could see why people are still going to give that respect to Izzy. He's proven more in the UFC and in the MMA world. Maybe I could understand why he would be like a minus 150, which is, I see that line coming down a little bit. I think that line's going to come down a little bit, and we're going to see him settle in like a minus 140, minus 150. I think people are going to start to get hyped up on the Pereira dog line, and it's going to be based on the fact that Izzy's the champion. He's proven and this and that, but I'm saying there's more value on Pereira, obviously, if I'm picking him to win this fight, but this is going to be a crapshoot. This is going to be an old an old country West standoff. They're going to be out there, you know, walking, taking their steps away from each other, circling back, and drawing their guns and shooting them out. And whoever lands that clean shot first is going to be the guy that prevails. And, you know, I don't know why this wants to freeze up on me over here, but Alex Pereira is going to be my pick to win the main event, and I cannot wait for this matchup. All right, guys, that's going to wrap up UFC 281. It's going to be an excellent night of fights. Make sure you're following me on all my social media to keep up to date with me throughout the night this upcoming Saturday. It's going to be a great one. I've got to leave you guys with some parting words. I'll kind of simplify them, but I think this is a message that needs to be said. You know, I've seen a little bit of this, I wouldn't say in my circle, but around the way, I've seen a little bit of this through the grapevines, and it really makes me cringe. And I hope this isn't the case with any of you, but you all know that fellow guy that kind of gets dominated by the female in his life, kind of gets controlled, manipulated, bullied, right? There's guys that get bullied by the females in their life. I hope this isn't the case with any of you guys, but if it is, you know, maybe I can give a couple words that can help get you out of that situation, man. You got to have dignity. You got to have respect for yourself. If you don't have that respect for yourself from the get-go, don't expect anyone to give it to you that's around you, including the female in your life. The more you give them, the more rope you give them, you know, the more slack you give them, the more they're going to use it to hang you. You need to have dignity. You need to have respect for yourself. All right. When you look at yourself in the mirror, understand what you bring to the table. And if you don't feel that you bring enough to the table, then step it up and make yourself feel more worthwhile. Bring some more to the table, because you could always bring more to the table. Okay. Take care of yourself like we talked about. Feel good about yourself. And it's going to string into all these positive events in your life. But I've seen some females, you know, this is something that not a lot of people talk about. They talk about abusive men or this and that. I've seen a lot of situations throughout my life where females dominate and bully the men in their life. And we can go from an extreme standpoint even to just some mild situations. You know, don't ever feel like you can't have any guy time in your life. You know, your girl keeps you locked down 24/7. You're scared to go grab drinks once a month with some of your old friends because your old lady doesn't let you and she has you on a tight leash. Come on, you got to have respect for yourself as a man. All right. And if you're having trouble getting to that situation, or getting to that point where you're able to do it because you're just so controlled, you got to start off slow. Start putting yourself in a situation where you're respected more, or where you start to give signs that you're not taking that crap anymore. Handle yourself like the man that you are. Look in the mirror and take control of your situation, because life's short. And for any of you guys that are stuck inside the house all the time, or you're only allowed to go with your old lady and the family, or your girlfriend doesn't want you doing anything, life's short. Before you know it, you're going to be an old man. All right. The girl that you're dating, for the majority of the time, you won't even be with her for the long term, right? Statistically. So you're wasting all this time being controlled by this girl that you might not even know down the line. Okay. She's only going to respect you more if you put your foot down and you let her know what you want to do. Now, don't take advantage. Don't be don't be an asshole. Don't be ridiculous. Don't make a fool of yourself where you're never going to be trusted, and you're never going to be where you're never going to be in a situation where you're able to do that in a peaceful way because you've already blown it. You know, be smart about it, but have a good balance in your life. I see a lot of men that feel like they are not even allowed to leave their cage because, the old lady don't want them going to do this or want them doing that. Or I see the way some of these old ladies talk to their man. And don't be one of those types of guys. All right, be a stand-up guy. You'll feel better about yourself. Your woman will respect you more so, and it'll benefit you more so in the long run as well. All right, so remember that too. They might act like it's a problem and they might stir things up in the beginning, but overall they're gonna start scratching their head and they're gonna like what they see, and that will translate into a lot of fun for you in a lot of ways too. All right, you'll feel good about yourself. All right, so think about that. I'll go more on about that down the line as well. But some of you guys, I know some of you guys need to hear that because I see it through the grapevine. It makes me sick. All right, guys, signing out. Teller.
Welcome to the show. This the MMA fortune teller. Yeah.
The MMA fortune teller.
The teller.